All right, I was asked to give a gear rundown from the show that I did for the Electrozone on January 30th, I think it was, of 2022. Psychic Blizzard. And so whenever I hear about a show or a theme of the show, I try to somehow match it with the tones I'm working with, right? And so, cold. I'm looking for atmosphere. I'm looking for the strange, crunchy reverberations you hear on a cold day when you're out walking across the frozen lake. Wind, but also, the vibe of cold. It's always, it's beautiful, but it's also very dangerous, right? So I try to get that in there too. So the first thing you hear in the show, just like the same thing you hear now, which is a thing I put together in Poly, which is basically, if you can see the graphic interface, it's like an old school movie sonar screen, kind of, right? And you can't see it, but it sweeps through the circle at a particular tempo, which I think is pretty slow here. And then you drop an orb in the circle, and then as it sweeps through and hits those orbs, it'll fire off a sample. And the size of the orb and all these things matter, like how far away it is from the center, figures into how it sounds and all these things, right? And of course you can program with all kinds of effects. You can tell I put some delays and some reverb onto it, a little bit of distortion because I like things that aren't too clean. And my favorite thing about Poly is that right here in this bottom left is it's a probability. So most of these are set to around 25 to 30, and this one up here is like 12. Oops, I just put a new one in there. This one down here is 25%. This one up here is 38. This one is 12%. This one's a new one. And this one is at 30%, which means that's the probability of that sample firing on each sweep. And the thing I like about that is then you get things like this, where it's like, it's going, but it wasn't firing anything for a while. So I like that irregularity of it, that the probability, messing with the probability settings imparts a little bit of randomness to it, which I like. And so Poly 2 from the iPad is running over here into an Electrix Filter Queen, which is your basic. It's got a resonance envelope follower, it's got an LFO for depth and speed, resonance frequency. You can do high, low band, and notch filtering. You can do momentary over here. It basically was invented for DJ effects, things like that. And right now it's cranked to just dry, so it's cranked to just dry. So I turn it up to about 12 o'clock, and you can start to hear the filter sweeps, right? And during the show, you would see me, that's the knob I was mostly playing with on the Electrics throughout the show, just to give it, some pizzazz. And so from the Filter Queen, it's running into over here this Digitech Polar reverb pedal. Tails are on. It's set to halo. Liveliness and decay is cranked, and then the level is looks to be about 10 o'clock. Once in a while I would play with that, but very rarely. Reverb tends to be more of a set and forget kind of a pedal for me. And then from there, it's going into the mixing board, where I'm adding some delays as well, and it's totally cranked. The FX end for that channel is totally cranked, right? Because I wanted this just to be like the background sort of atmospheric piece. All right, the other thing that's going on here, or that was going on during the show, was I was also using this mic. This mic is run into a Boss RC30 loop pedal, and the other thing running into the Boss RC loop pedal is this little Korg Monotron which is probably about the best $30 I ever spent in my life. And what I like about that is, you know, it's got the built-in delay with the feedback effect, so basically it can start to oscillate on its own if you crank the feedback up far enough, like that. And then when you manipulate the time, you need stuff like that. So sawtooth and square wave kind of a thing with a built-in echo. So it's quite a fun little thing. Glad I got it. So that was also running into the RC30, and so I was doing some looped sort of chanting stuff, like throat sounds that I would layer in some kind of harmony with a little bit of the Korg thrown in for some more textures. And so the RC30 is then running into this sub and up, which adds, I'll kick it in now, you can hear it, right? It's an octave below, it's in one octave below, another octave below that, and then an octave above. And you can adjust the mix for each of those three, as well as the dry control over here. So so then RC30 into the sub and up, and then into the board, where I did at the time have some echoes and stuff. But I didn't want to put those in when I'm trying to talk about what I'm doing here yet, right? So that's what's going on there. The other thing that's happening is I'm using the Pipsqueak synth over here, right? And I like, let me see, is everything off? Everything's, just turn these off. That didn't work. Alright, so Pipsqueak. Let me turn that down a little bit while I'm talking about it. So what I like about this is, again, it's you never know what's going to happen when you touch it, right? So I like to play it like 3 or 4 fingers at a time. And once I find a spot, I like to kind of roll my fingers across it, kind of like when you're getting, getting your fingerprints taken at the cop shop or whatever. Just kind of roll your fingers, right? But because the show has to do with the cold, right? So what I wanted to do was basically totally scoop out the mids. I mean, not even in that, namby-pamby death metal sort of way, but I mean like totally cut them out. Because I wanted to emphasize the lows and the highs. So I run it into this, again, it's an electric EQ killer. And it's what I like about what this does is basically it's got a couple of crossover knobs here where you can set a frequency. Looks like it's set about 85 or so for low, and pretty high up for the highs. And then what happens is that this controls how much of that frequency gets cut out, right? So I just took the mids and just flattened it, like way to nothing. So I'm going to put the mic down for a second and let you hear what happens here. So basically I wanted the lows and highs out of that only, right? So the mids are turned all the way down, totally dead, and then the low and high are absolutely cranked. That is, so the Pipsqueak is running into the electric EQ killer, and then that is just running straight into the board with a little bit of delays on it, and The other thing I like about the pipsqueak is that, you know, the two outputs, I just put them into a stereo channel, so it's like hard left and hard right. So that through headphones, it, you know, can be kind of jarring as to what's going on there. The other thing that's going on in the show is the rainbow drone that I built. I can't even remember because time doesn't mean anything during the pandemic. A few months ago, and it's 6 oscillators, fully analog oscillators that I built, and they're set up in pairs, low, mid, and high. Each knob controls the pitch of the oscillator. This is a voltage starve control, and it's dual output, so it's two volume knobs up here. And so let me turn these all off, turn this on, crank that up. So you've got, oh, I'm supposed to turn it up over here. Let me see where we're going. Looks like here. Alright, so there's a little bit of echo from the mixing board on this, but that's the only effect right now. Let me pause that. And so they're set kind of in pairs, and so when you can get like close but not quite, like that. You get these cool beat frequencies, you know, where there's a little bit of a node there where it's just a little louder. And because it's hard left and hard right, sometimes the beat frequency, those little pulses, feel like they're moving across the stereo field, which I love that effect, right? So, low, mid, and high. Here's the highs. Some lows. And because they're all wired in the same circuit, sometimes when you're messing with one, it actually changes the pitch of the others, again, adding a little bit of that chaos that I like to hear, right? And then the voltage starve is where things get a lot more dramatic. Alright, so the rainbow drone is running into a couple of digital delays. Set to, I think it's setting number 4, which is a tape echo emulator. Which means when you mess with the time and the repeats, it does some of the same sort of like self-oscillating, feeding back stuff that was happening over here. And then from there, I was running into an Earthquake Devices pyramids for those phase effects. All right, so that's what's going on there. So the rainbow drone, and again, I built this myself. If you want one, let me know. I just sold one on my Reverb store. I'll probably put a link to that at the bottom of this video when I put it out. The other thing that's going on here is this, which I don't know why this is there now, but whatever. This is a hand crank cassette deck player, and this was basically a device that was intended for use to bring, for missionaries to bring the word of God to parts of the world that didn't have electricity or literacy, right? So they would travel out there with their little toolbox and a few of these and a bag of cassette tapes, I'm presuming, of like Bible stories or whatever the hell, right? And it just works simply by cranking the right. And the thing that's going on here is there's too much echo on right now, right? There is a sweet spot where as I'm cranking it, I can have a little bit of control over the pitch to kind of give it that broken tape deck feel. One of these days I'm going to modify it so it's a little bit more direct drive. So that is, I make my own cassette tapes. In the case of this show, I just pulled some samples, and then I sampled a couple of things off movies. And then the last sample is actually a field recording of one of those black ice skaters in Norway or Finland or somewhere, where these dudes like go out onto super thin ice that it's so thin you can see the water underneath, which is why the ice is black, right? And they skate on it. And as they're skating, because of the shape of the ice crystals and the resonance of the lake and the space between the ice and the water, it makes these cool like laser blast sounds as they're skating. So that's on there too. The crank deck is running from here into a Vox Flores 24. A Vox Flores 24. It's basically a crazy fuzz pedal. And when it's on, actually the thing it distorts is actually the tape noise itself, which is kind of cool. And then you'll hear there on some settings, the Vox, the 24 actually generates its own little pulsing noise like that. So that's good for disguising the samples a little bit. So from there, it is running into a Keeley Darkside pedal, which is basically a pedal that was designed to emulate the Pink Floyd guitar tones with like phaser and tape echo and all that, a little bit of fuzz. I was using it mostly for phase effects, which I can control with the pedal or expression pedal down on the floor, which you can't see right now. And then once in a while I would kick in the fuzz. Just if I felt like it. So, crank deck, Vox Flores 24, into the Keeley. The Keeley is then running into an Earthquake Devices Astral Destiny reverb pedal. Which I think I have set to sub shimmer. I would again play with the mix live to sort of mix between dry and wet. I would play with the tone to sort of brighten or darken whatever is coming through here. Especially if this was like going off, making weird things like that, I would try to like vary it. Stretch it. Things get really, really out there. So turn that off. So yeah, crank deck, Vox Flores 24, Keeley Darkside, Astral Destiny into the mixing board for you, and then there's even more echo added at that end, right? And so the whole the whole idea here is trying to match the theme and to give myself a certain amount of flexibility in what I can do. And my recommendation, if you're trying to set up any sort of pedal-based, instrument or slash noise thing, it's really beneficial to learn what each thing does or sounds like, or what its personality is, right? Because then when you're at a show or you're trying to, just rehearsing or whatever, and you hear something, you'll know what it is, because then you have control over it. If you're just like twiddling knobs and not knowing what sound is what, you don't know what you're doing, and you're hearing something that's kind of annoying and you can't find it right away, then the annoyance just keeps going, right? So that's a problem. Learn your stuff. Learn what they sound like, learn what the personalities are, and then you have more control over which ones you bring in, which ones you take out, how they interact, all that sort of thing. As you get more familiar with these instruments, then your performance will be that much better. Just my advice to anybody out there. So this is a mishmash of stuff. I hope this was helpful, insightful, maybe even inspiring. I hope, right? That's the whole goal, right? If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Hit the like and subscribe, that sort of thing. Yeah, so that's what was going on for the Psychic Blizzard show. Thanks for joining me.